Welcome back to the Itsy Game Series. This is episode 9. We're going to be refining our pipe assets and we're going to be adding sockets and collision. So our objectives today is we're going to refine our pipe assets and do our prep for procedural level generation based on the pipes. So in order to do that, we need to create a couple of different pipe variations that will be kind of the base for our procedural pipe generation system. So we'll need vertical pipes, diagonal pipes, and we will also need connection pipes for both of those. And then in addition to that, we're going to add sockets within Blender, so that way we can use those with our procedural generation system to then place our pipes. In addition to that, we're going to use collision within Blender. We're going to create our collision in Blender and then import it into Unreal. And we're going to do it in such a way that we have, full control over the collision in Blender, and we can get a more accurate setup based on what we're doing. So it should be pretty exciting. It's a little bit of a long video. The first video, this one, is just going to be getting the shapes, and then at the end I go ahead and set up the collision and the sockets for the vertical pipe. After this, I will make an additional couple of videos that are optional where I do the collision and sockets for the other shapes. So we'll create the shapes and we'll do the sockets and collision for one of them in this video. And then I'll have optional videos if you want to do the step-by-step for adding the collision for the more complicated shapes after. So with that being said, let's get over to Blender and make this happen. Okay, here we are in Blender. We're going to get the second iteration of our test meshes going. So we've got some things we need in order to continue on. So we need some base meshes for the different variations or different categories of our pipes. So in order to make that happen, we need, kind of a profile for the pipe itself. So we're going to start with that. So we need Shift A, and we're going to add a plane. And then we're going to get more serious about keeping our scaling manageable. So we're going to start this with being 10 meters, so 10 meters square. Now the actual actual drainage pipe is not an actual square, it's more of a rectangle. So we're going to go ahead and make that happen as well. And to make this a little easier to visualize, I can turn on my edge width, and then I can look here and see this has got 12 meters, which will work for what we're trying to do. I'm also going to take these two sides here, one over there on the left and the one on the top, those edges. We'll bring those back down to the origin point. And then I'm going to add a mirror and then mirror that across the X and the Y axis. So that way we can just work with this corner here and it'll affect the whole thing. It'll just all be even. I'm going to turn clipping on so I don't get any extra geometry that I didn't want. And then I'll switch to faces. And I'll select this face and I'll extrude it on the Z. And I'm going to extrude it 10 meters. So that'll make kind of our base shape here. Now I want to add a bevel on this corner here just to make it a little nicer, and that'll probably end up in the final model anyway. So we're going to hit Control B on this model, or this corner, and then we're going to do, 4, sounds about right. And then we're going to make its width 2, so that way it lines up with the grid. Okay, so now we have that. This here is our basic shape for our pipe. So this will work out pretty well for what we're doing. So I'm going to name this pipe. Okay, now because I want to save this because later on when we start refining this mesh again through the next pass, we'll use this as kind of the starting shape for that. So now that we have that, we can Shift D to duplicate, and then we can take our original pipe object that we created here, and we're just going to move this off to the side because we won't be using that again today. And then we are left with this guy here. So the duplicate, we do want to apply that mirror modifier so that that's done. And then we're going to get rid of the extra geometry we don't need, which is the top and the bottom. So get a hold of these faces here, X face, and then that gets rid of them. And we don't have any extra geometry, so we did well. Okay, so now that we have that done, the next thing we need to do is get the normals flipped. So we're going to turn our normals on, and we'll set them to 1 because it's a pretty big object. And then we can see they're all facing out like they should be if it was a normal mesh. But since we're doing our kind of special, having everything facing in, we want to flip the normals so that way they're all facing inside. So that way the outside is called when we're looking at it. Okay, so we've got that. That's pretty much good. We're going to go ahead and shave the whole darn thing smooth, and we'll set it to auto smooth, and then that will take care of our smoothing. Now, the next thing we want to do with this is make sure we have everything selected in edit mode. Go to UV and Smart Unwrap, and go ahead and unwrap that. Again, this is a test mesh, and we're not putting specific textures on it, so we don't really have to worry about the UVs. And so, just do enough, straight, smart unwrap is going to be just fine for our purposes. Okay, so now this is set, and so we need to give it a name. And this is going to be kind of important going forward. So we're going to be naming these things based on what they are. And those are also going to be the categories of pipes, which we'll then use to generate our level procedurally. So the naming is important in this case. So for this, what I'm doing is I'm naming them based on their kind of their direction. So this one will be a D90 because it is, a 90 degree. It's like straight up and down. Okay. So if you can picture here, this would be a 90-degree angle right here. Be like, boom, boom, we're good. Okay. So that is our D90 shape, which is perfect. It's ready to go. We've got it unwrapped. Everybody's happy. So we can duplicate that and then take our original D90 and set it off to the side because that shape is ready to go. Okay, now the next one we're going to do is going to be the transition between a D90 and a 45-degree corner. So in order to do that, we'll go into edit mode on our duplicated D90, and we will select this vertice right here because we're going to actually stretch it, to the right. So we select that vertice, hit Shift S, and then cursor to selected, which will put the cursor on that vertice. And then we're going to switch our what's the name of that? The transform pivot point to 3D cursor, which means that our pivot point will then be this spot right here. So now that we have our pivot point set, we'll go ahead and grab this top edge loop, and then we're going to extrude and rotate on the x-axis. So we're going to say E for extrude, R for rotate, X to keep it on the x-axis. We'll move it up a bit, and then we're going to go down here and put -5, because then we're moving in the negative direction, and we want 5 degrees. Hit that, and then boom, it is there. Now we're going to keep doing that until we get to 45 degrees. So we're going to do the same thing over and over again. So extrude, rotate X, move it up a bit, drop in -5, extrude, rotate X, drop in -5, extrude, rotate X, and keep on going until we hit 45. So let me count, see where I'm at. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. So extrude, rotate X. That make 30. Extrude, rotate X. That make 35. Oops. Extrude, rotate X. Should make 40, I believe. Let me double check, make sure I'm not off. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. Yep. Okay, so one more should get us to 45. So extrude X, rotate X, and 45. Everything went well. I should have a 45-degree angle there. Now what I want to do is keep this all uniform. So I want this to go out again another 10 meters this way. So in order to do that, what I can do is I can grab that top edge loop again. Don't select it down here because you might catch something you don't want. Select it up here. And then, it's, Alt and then pick on it and then it'll grab the whole edge. Go ahead and give it a face by hitting F and then hit Alt E and exclude along normals. And then it'll extrude along this normal here. And we're going to go -10. And then it'll be exactly where we want it to be. And so we can hit X face to get rid of that face again. And then now we have that basic shape. Now we've got a bunch of extra vertices and geometry down here we don't need. So what we're going to do is hit A and go to mesh and cleanup and merge by distance. And that'll get rid of all the extra vertices. So we lost like 27 vertices, which is great. Okay, so now that's all squared away. We have our basic shape here. Our normals are all facing inside the way we wanted them to. And we are looking like we are in pretty good shape here. So now we have that and we need to name it. So it starts at a 90 degrees and it hits a 45. So it's going to be D90, D45. So D90, D45. Okay, so that's the mesh for the D90, D45. Now the next one we're going to want is the actual D45, the mesh that's going to be at a 45-degree angle here. And that's super easy to pull from this. All we got to do is grab this edge loop again and then give it another, actually we're going to duplicate it, so Shift D, and then we get a hold of that edge loop just by itself. And then we go to mesh and separate by selection, and then back to object modes, and then we can select this edge loop that we made right there. And then we hit tab to get back into edit mode, hit A, go ahead and give it a face, and then Alt extrude, and then extrude that one -10. Okay, so then now we have that shape as well. So we can go ahead and we can actually move our connector piece here over off to the side, and we'll probably need a little bit more room, so we'll just move all these over. Okay, and then this one here is the right shape, but it's not in the right place. So what we need to do in order to get its origin to line up the way we want it to is we select this face here, put the cursor to selected, so then I'll put it in the center of this geometry here, and then go back into object mode and set origin to 3D cursor, and then I'll put it right where we wanted it to be. And then we can go cursor to world origin and selection to cursor, so then I'll put it where we need it to be. And then we can get rid of the extra faces we don't need. So X face, and then everything looks good there. Go ahead and we can shade that smooth and make sure our auto smooth is on, so then it is happy again. I'm pretty sure I forgot to unwrap that last one, so we'll just unwrap them all one more time when we get to the end. So now this is good, and we'll just go ahead and name this the D45. And then we will set this one off to the side. Okay, now we have the D45. And we need to do the opposite of what we did to this guy here. We need to go from a 45-degree angle back up to a 90-degree angle. Now, technically, you could take this one and you could rotate it and figure out what offsets you need. But because we're going to use sockets, we're not going to do it that way. We're going to make it's going to be an extra step on this end and then a lot less steps on the other end when we're like setting up our classes and stuff. So we're going to go ahead and basically reduplicate this one in the opposite direction. So we can take the D45, duplicate it, and then selection to cursor, and then it's ready to go. We can get a hold of it, and then we're going to do the same thing we did before, except this time we're going to select this upper vertex here, cursor to selected, and then we're still using that as our pivot point. So then we can grab this edge loop and then extrude, rotate X, and then it's 5. Okay, extrude, rotate X. And we're going to keep doing that again until we get to 45 degrees. Five, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. So extrude, X. X. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. So I must need one more. Okay. And now since we still have that edge loop selected, we can just extrude that on the Z and extrude that 10 meters. And then we will have the other end the way we wanted it, just perfect. So then, if we go to, now we should be just perfect the way we wanted it to be. Okay, cool. So then we name this one, because it's going from a 45 to a 90, D45, D90. All right. And then we need to clean it up because it's got a bunch of extra geometry we didn't need. So go ahead and clean up, merge by distance, and then there you go. Okay, so we've got all our basic shapes. Let's go ahead and make sure they're all unwrapped. So UV, smart unwrap, huzzah. A to select all, UV, smart unwrap, good. A, UV, smart unwrap, and it's good. A, UV, smart UV, unwrap, and it's good. Okay, so now we have our 4 basic shapes for the 4 basic pipes that we're going to have. So we're going to have vertical pipes, 45-degree pipes, and then a connector pipe for each one. And then we're actually going to be able to take these basic shapes and add some more diversity to them as we generate our levels. Now from here, we want to save this as a file by itself. So we're going to hit Save As. And I did an earlier recording, so some of this stuff is in there. I'm just going to rename over top of it. I named it Pipe Profile the first time. I'm going to go ahead and keep it that way this time. So I hit Save As. And so now this is Pipe Profile. Now, the first one that we're going to do is, I think I'm going to go ahead and do the 90 because that will be the simplest one to show. And then I will go back, or I will continue on doing the rest of them, adding their collision and their sockets. So that way, if somebody's, you're pretty smart with Blender and you know what you're doing with Blender and you want to speed along, you can just basically create these and their socket points on your own, and you don't have to watch the rest. And for those of you who want to keep me company, you're welcome to do so. So that being said, what we're going to do is we're going to actually take this and we're going to save this again. We're going to save the file, and this time we're going to save it as pipe underscore D90. Okay, and then I'm double check up here, make sure I'm working with the right file and I'm not overwriting something that I wanted to save, so I know I'm on D90. So I don't need anything but the D90, and I am going to delete everything else. All right, I'm going to put my cursor to world origin and my selection to cursor. Oops. I guess I should select it first, huh? Selection to cursor. Okay, so that'll put that back on the origin point. Whenever you export, you always want to make sure this origin point, your stuff is on that point where you want it, or else it'll be wonky on the other end. Okay, now the reason we're doing these in separate files is going to be this. So we want to be able to have a socket in here that we can then use as a location for connecting other pipes to this pipe. So in order to do that, we need to add like kind of an empty object within it to act as the socket and name it correctly, so that way Unreal can see it and say, oh yeah, that's a socket when it brings it in. So we know we're going to want our next pipe to be basically centered on this open space here on the top. So if we grab this edge loop here and we hit selection and cursor to selected, that'll give us the space right there in the middle where we want it to without any real effort or calculations or anything. It's just done for us. So then we hit Shift A in object mode and we add an empty. Okay, and I'm just going to go ahead and do, I guess, like a single arrow. That sounds good. So we got a single arrow here, and we're going to name it socket. And then underscore end. And this is the reason why we're doing them in separate files. Okay, so if we were to have a bunch of different meshes together, there would be more than one socket underscore end. So because there would be more than one socket underscore end, Blender wouldn't let you do that. And you'd have a bunch of socket names that would be different, and we want them to be the same for each mesh. So that way when we grab the mesh, we're like, I want the end socket. The socket may be in different places, but the mesh, like it lines up correctly. So we don't have like, socket underscore 0 underscore 1. It would kind of defeat the purpose. Okay, so there we go. We now have a socket. When we import this into Unreal, that socket will register and everybody will go home happy. Now, the next thing that I want to do is I want to add collision. So in order to add collision to this, I could do it within Unreal and that'd be perfectly fine. But I want to have a bit more control. And when I start getting to the joints, that's when it really is important, because that would be a lot harder in Unreal to do and have the control that we have here in Blender. So let's go ahead and get the collision going. So all we have to do that is we need to add a basic shape for the collision. We're going to go ahead and start with this one. It's going to be cubes. So we're going to add a cube. Probably would have been easier to do that if that was at the world origin. So selection, cursor to world origin, shift add, mesh, cube. Okay. Now, what we can do to make this a little easier to visualize, and we kind of bounce back when we do the other half, we'll probably bounce back a little bit. If we go to visibility in the object, or actually it's viewport display, we can switch this from textured to wired, and then now we're good there. It's just like a wireframe. Okay, and period so I can focus on it. All right, now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to edit this, and so we go into edit mode, and then I would go up here and I would set my scale to 0.25, so that way we can move this around with a little more with a degree of more control than we would have otherwise. Okay, so we bring that right up to the edge of this mesh here, and then we can grab, we want faces. We can grab this face here, and back. So I put this back to bounding box. So then that means when I select something, it's going to be what I had. Okay, now we're going to make this so it's down to 0.5. So that's going to be the thickness of our collision box. And what that'll do is that'll help keep, because like Itsy is basically, he's 1 meter. So like this, bonking up against this is gonna protect us from falling outside of the mesh. And we may end up changing this a bit later, like skimming it down a bit, but I'm going to try 0.5 and see if that's noticeable. If it's not, then it's dead on and we're happy with it. So I can do this so I can kind of see through the pipe mesh there. Okay, and then I could take all of this and I can just drag it up so it's on line with that floor there. Okay, and then so okay, all right. 3 takes a little bit of moving this around to kind of like get it where you want it as far as being able to see. So you see that's like I go to 3. If I go to 3 on my view, you can see that actually lines up with the edge. But if I go canted, it doesn't quite look like it does. I don't know if that confused people or not. We'll see. All right, so then I'm going to drag this one out so it's in line with the edge. Okay, and then the top, I'm going to drag that up until it's in line with the top. Okay, so now that shape is good. Okay, and then I can go Shift D to duplicate that shape. And then I can actually move that over so that way it's in line there. And nine, was it 9 or 6? 5? I ended up in, there you go, 7 is the top. Okay, so now I can see that that's lined up the way I wanted it. Okay, cool. Okay, so now we have collision on this side and that side. Now we need it on the other two sides. So what we can do is we can take the same box and we can shift duplicate it. And we can go over and rotate that, Z 90. And I can bring that in like that. Grab this face here. Whoop. Actually, I want to grab, need to be in edit mode to grab the face. So grab the face, drag it in so that way it's in line there. And then they're not like actually overlapping each other. They're just next to each other. Okay. Shift duplicate. And move this one over there. Okay, so now we have our basic shapes. Okay, so now that the basic shapes are in, now we have to name them. And that's where it's going to come in. And actually, before we get any further with that, I'm going to select everything. I'll make sure my cursor is at the world origin. And I'm going to set origin to 3D cursor. So now what that's going to do is make sure that all of these, when they import in, will be in their correct position. Okay, so now we got to give them names. So that's super easy to do. So what it is, so this is the mesh name. So we hit Control C on the mesh name, okay? Because we're going to be using that over and over and over again. Okay, so I like to pick a direction. So like I'll hit 1, so that'll give me the front, and I click the first one. Now these are boxes. So I'm gonna bring over here the documentation for when you bring this in. So you have some different options. So like a UBX is a box. Now it's got to be a rectangle and a perfect rectangle. You can't like start jockeying things around and make it like an odd shape. So it's a box, UBX. Okay, a capsule is obviously a capsule. You've seen them before. It's like what's around Itsy. A sphere is just that, it's a sphere. And a UCX is going to be a convex shape or a more complicated shape. And it says, it shows here kind of like, shapes that are okay and not okay. Like you can't have spaces inside them and, it can't fold in on itself and that sort of thing. So in this case, we're using UBX, but if you end up skipping ahead, when you get to the pipes that, can't to the left or to the right or whatever, you're going to end up having to have some UCXs, and that's fine too. It's just, whatever the appropriate, hull type is, you want to make sure you get the right prefix in. So these will all be boxes, so they'll be UBX. So I'm starting with this one. So I'm going to be UBX underscore, and then the mesh name, and then the number of the collision object. So that's 1. So like later on when you're doing the other sides, it's fine. Even if it's like a UBX, then you go UCX, whatever. This number is which one it is. It's not by type. It's just total number. Okay, so then this one would be UBX underscore D90 underscore 02. Okay, and then just working right around. UBX underscore D90 underscore 03. Okay. And then this one, UBX underscore D90 underscore, what are we up to? 4? 4. Okay. So now we should have everything that we need to export this mesh and bring it into Unreal. So we're going to go ahead and select everything. We're going to go to File, Export, Oop, STI. I don't want STI. I don't want FBX. Export FBX. Okay. And it's going to be pipe D90. So we're going to actually name this. So SM underscore pipe D90. All right. And then we're going to go ahead and set our presets to Unreal. And then export. If everything went well, this should go into Unreal just fine. One thing you may notice here is I added my grid box material from one of my other tutorials. It was the substance grid box material. You don't need to do that. I'm just doing it because it'll make it easier for me to differentiate as I test. If you're interested in substance and doing that, that's great. You don't have to do it. You can stick with gray box, not a problem, or make your own grid box. All right, so I go to my assets, and then I want to import that new asset in. So I go to, let's see here, I got my tutorials, assets, pipe 2, and then let's see here, what do we name that? Pipe D90, yeah? Yeah, pipe D90, it should be the one. And then don't need collision, because we're bringing in our own in, and it should just work. All right, so SM pipe D90. Okay, so bringing it in works just fine, it looks like. Let's go ahead and double check. We'll show collision, show a simple collision, and there are the boxes that we put in. Just exactly the way we put them in, and where we put them in. So everything is good there. I did notice with the sockets, it's the relative scale is a little funky. So like I go in here and if I just put this to 1, 1, 1, now it doesn't have that ginormous, placard, but you can see here, here's our socket end. That means that when we call from C++, this type of mesh or this mesh, specifically, if we go and say, get socket end, it's going to give us this position right here, which is what we're going to use to then put another object above this, which is going to work out, like great, So, I want to do that. Shoot. We'll just re-import that. Yeah, I don't know why I did that. So go 1, 1, 1. There we go. All right, save. Okay, so now we are good to go here. Now we can bring this into our game and bring this right here. And while we're here, I am going to go down to my new grid box material and I'm going to create an instance for this. So I'm going to go down to my grid box, create a new instance grid box. Okay, and I want to use triplanar. Okay, and then it's going to be, let's see here, grid box, and then underscore D90 underscore inst. And then we're going to do down here, same thing for the material. I got a double grid box there. That's not helpful. D90 max. Okay, so now that's there. Okay, and then I'll go ahead and I'll change this around a little bit. We'll use physical size. Save, close that down, and then I'll work on the instance itself. No, I don't want that one. I want the inst for D90, this one. Okay, here's where all my variables are. Okay, so then Late Bloomer Games. All right, and then this is going to be pipe D90. And then let's give it a color, about, like a purpley color maybe. And then this has been looking better, I think, in the dark. Okay, so we'll save that. And then I think I'm going to do 2 by 2 instead of 4 by 4. Okay. And then I'm going to apply that to the mesh itself. Oop. All right, so go back to assets, details, this, D90. Ooh, that is kind of an ugly color, isn't it? All right, well, let's change that color a little bit. Need D90s in this. I can bring this down so it's easier to see. And then maybe, where's the contrast? That'll probably work, at least for now. I can always change these colors on the fly at any point, so there it is, D90 1 by 1. Okay, so then if I hit play, Itsy is inside here, everything's good, but bounce back. Okay, now I need to fix that collision. So one of the things that we're running into here is the collision with Itsy's camera. So what we can do is we can go back into our mesh and then go down to collision. And then we go to, should be custom. Okay, and then for camera, ignore. Because we don't care about the camera. Because the camera has a probe. Essentially, it shoots a line out from it to check to see what it's hitting. So we don't care about that. We're good. We may change that later if we need to, but I don't know if we will. So now Itsy's fine. See, it's like the camera goes exactly the way it's supposed to go. Now, obviously, Itsy can jump over top of this box. That's fine. We'll be adding more pipes as it goes anyway. So there we are. We're good there. I think we will probably later on go back and change Itsy. From here, I am going to create a couple additional videos where they're optional, where I work on the collision and exporting the other shapes in. But at this point, you have all of the tools in your toolbox that you need to be able to add those other meshes in on your own, so you don't necessarily have to watch those. So I'll tag those as optional videos. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please, by all means, drop those in the comments. Like I said, I know I don't have a big following, but I'm having a heck of a time doing this, and I look forward to really getting this game going. All right, thanks a lot, and I will see you later.